I'm in Moldova! Country number 7.
This is Moldova, and that dot is me. I'll admit that February probably wasn't the best time to be visiting by bike, with the countryside alternating between cold and snowy and cold and muddy.
My god, the visibility is terrible. It's really nice to be able to see so much of the Moldovan countryside on my first day here in Moldova. A lot of unmechanized farming here. As you can see, there's a... Dobry den! Here's a slightly better example of the Moldovan flag. I'm sure a lot of people actually haven't seen this before because Moldova is such a small country and not that well known. But there it is.
But I was intrigued, and I didn't really feel like I was in Europe anymore. As one of the world's least visited countries, its novelty, and the friendly reception I had from locals, who were pretty surprised to see a foreigner cycling here, let alone in winter, took my mind off the cold. I spent almost a month there, cycling the length of the country, and got to know a nation that's about as far from the beaten track as you can get.
So here in Moldova, sometimes the only place you can get water is from one of these wells, and you use this dial here to bring up a bucket, and in here is a well. One interesting thing is there's Romania ahead of me, and you can see lots of street lights and stuff. There's much better infrastructure here, but if you look behind me, there's like nothing apart from the occasional house, and that's Moldova back there. There's like no street lighting in Moldova, it's really bad. That is apparently magazine. I think that means a shop, so that's a shop. I'm currently looking for a restaurant that's supposed to be around here somewhere. I can't find my host. The lighting's so bad here that I can't see any of the apartment numbers. God, it's so foggy.
Moldova has had a bit of a bumpy ride since the collapse of the Soviet Union. It's the poorest country in Europe and ranks as one of the most unhappy nations in the world. It can't seem to catch a break. In 2014, a bank fraud scandal saw $1 billion, or 12% of the entire country's GDP, stolen from 3 Moldovan banks. And the country never got the money back. For such a small nation, Moldova's being pulled in a ton of different directions. Politically, it's split between pro-Europe and pro-Russia parties, and those who want Moldova to charter its own course without picking a side. Divides exist between those that speak Russian, Romanian and Ukrainian, and some people want unification with Romania. Why? Because that'd probably be the quickest way for the country to join the EU. To the south, there's an autonomous fractured region called Gagauzia, with pockets of territory disconnected from one another, and home to a Christian Turkic population, the Gagauz. There's even a distinct, critically endangered Gagauz language, which is very similar to Turkish. So Turkey is also trying to create a sphere of influence there, funding facilities like schools and hospitals. If Moldova ever did join Romania, there's a good chance Gagauzia would declare independence, since the Gagauz people are pretty hostile to that idea. But aside from all that, there is one embodiment of all that tension that stands above the rest. You see, within Moldova's borders, there sits a totally independent sliver of land, 20 kilometers across at its narrowest point, with a population of almost 500,000. A bastion of Soviet architecture and influence that has clung on while the world around it changed. So after cycling into Chisinau, Moldova's capital, I hopped on a bus and got a 12-hour visitor's permit to what some call the country that doesn't exist.
So I'm here in Transnistria, a region of Moldova that has officially declared its independence, but it isn't recognised as an independent nation. It's pretty quiet here. There's not many people walking around. So yeah, it's kind of strange because like there's this huge park and I'm like the only person in here. Even though they look kind of similar at first glance, it's kind of striking me how independent Transnistria really is. They have their own flag, their own number plates, and even their own currency, the Transnistrian ruble, which is really kind of cool, but I can only use it in this little tiny part of the world.
It's a statement of their independence. And no, these aren't pieces from a board game. This is the only currency in the world that uses plastic coins. Transnistria literally translates as across the Dniester River. But I learned a little too late that to some, that name is offensive. That's because it was popularised during the Axis occupation of the region in World War II. So if you ever do find yourself here and speaking to the locals, it's best to use the slightly wordy term Pridnestrovian Moldavian Republic, or PMR. If you come here looking for a Starbucks or a McDonald's, you're out of luck. You won't find any international chain franchises or shopping malls here, since United Nations restrictions make it very hard for foreign companies to invest in the region.
So there's the Transnistrian flag right next to the Russian flag. Transnistria has really close ties with Russia.
That hammer and sickle might look familiar from the days of the USSR, but the PMR is the only country that still displays it on their national flag. To delve a bit deeper into what life is actually like here, I met up with Anya, whose grandfather moved here when he was a soldier in the Soviet army.
You see, in our country there are three populations, Russian, Moldovans and Ukrainians. We have a president, we have ministers, many ministers,
Really?
and yeah, we have like a parliament, but it's called a different way and I don't know how to say it in English.
It has the slightly foreboding name of Supreme Council, and right in front of it, a huge statue of Lenin, one of many that you can find dotted around Tiraspol, the region's capital. But aside from a relatively new line drawn on a map, what separates Moldova from the PMR?
I think the mentality of people is just a little bit different. They're more European now, and in here it's more like a mix between Russia in our days and Soviet Union. I don't think anyone likes European Union here, yeah, and Moldova. I think the majority of people want to be a part of Russian Federation.
Yeah.
I asked Anya what she thought the future of her home rogue state might be, and whether she believes recognition as an independent nation, or integration with Russia, as some would prefer, is a realistic possibility.
Don't you think that if someone wanted our country to be recognized, it would have been recognized many years ago? It wouldn't take it so long, like with Crimea, right? They wanted to be a part of Russia. They became a part of Russia within several days. And it's taken already more than 25 years for Transnistria to become a recognized country.
She's got a point. The only countries that have recognized the PMR are, themselves, breakaway states, whose recognition is disputed. Russia is its biggest supporter, and its flags seem to be flying everywhere in Tiraspol as a public display of who's friends with who. But not even Vladimir Putin's government has recognised the PMR as independent, although admittedly they do have a consulate there.
So this is a memorial park, and I know that some of these are a memorial for World War II. Some of them are also from the war in Afghanistan, and then this wall here is actually a memorial for all the people who died in the War for Independence in 1992, or actually from 1990 to 1992. There are a lot of names. I did not realise the scale of that war. We obviously don't hear about it much in England.
The fighting only stopped when Russian soldiers were sent as peacekeepers here. To this day, they're still stationed along the border between the PMR and Moldova. No actual peace agreement was ever signed, so the two are still in a state of frozen conflict. If the peacekeepers leave, the fighting is likely to start again.
This whole street is green. You had the market back there, which is green. This thing here that goes up the side of the road, and even the roof of the church here.
The future of this relic of the USSR might largely depend on the countries around it. Anya told me she's worried that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine next door could destabilize the PMR, or even drag it into the fighting.
I'm really worried about the situation with the Ukraine. I'm really worried that a war is gonna happen.
Do you think that's going to have a big impact here?
Yeah, sure. We're a really small country, and Ukraine is friendly with United States and is friendly with the European Union, and maybe they will be armed better than our country.
It's a testament to the commitment that the people of the PMR have to remaining independent, that they push for self-governance despite being very small and surrounded by much larger adversaries. But hold on. Most of what I've seen and read in the media paints a picture of global joy and relief when the Soviet Union collapsed. So why would people still be hanging on to the past? Well, it turns out the narrative that everyone who lived in the USSR hated it, and they're all better off now that it's gone, isn't entirely accurate. Alex, in Chisinau, explained that's particularly the case for his parents' and grandparents' generations.
When we became independent, we have a joke that we became independent not just from Soviet Union, but from oil, from natural gas, from everything. And so we became independent and super poor at the same time. I remember this time when people were just going outside to cook food because there was no possibility, and people were bringing, like, I don't know how to call it, big, like, propane tanks.
Like canisters, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of factories, they just shut down. With a lot of people, a lot of engineers, a lot of very talented people, they become unemployed at one moment. So these people who were really talented engineers, and this was a really sad period of time, they start to sell things, and they're not good sellers, and they will like my father-in-law, he was going to Romania and selling some things which they didn't have there, or was going to Poland and then bringing something from Poland here. So yeah, a lot of sad things were happening, and you have seen now, all these retired people with really low retirement payment. They were coming here and selling, stuff from their houses or from somewhere else. It's like a flea market, but not organized flea market. Because in flea market, which you would find in Paris or UK, they sell some rare, unique things. But here they just sell just like shoes or coats or some clothes, just because you will give them like £2 and they will be happy, and it will cover like a lot of their needs.
These are people who lived under much more stability and financial security in the USSR, but now struggle to get by. So it's no surprise that a lot of them actually miss the Soviet Union, where people might not have had a lot, but at least most had something. and the PMR serves as a reminder that there are still plenty of people, in Europe and beyond, who'd rather return to some kind of union with Russia than develop closer ties with the EU. There was a sense of fragility in this unrecognised country, and I left wondering how much longer things could really last the way that they are. With its reliance on Russia for protection, the PMR's foundations seemed shaky and vulnerable, and its future dependent on the actions of the countries around it. For now, though, it remains an improbable and peculiar part, or not, depending on who you ask, of an equally intriguing country that still holds the atmosphere of the Soviet world.